Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the latest Diablo 4 news, including the recent campfire chat that the devs had, the latest on the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard, a roundup of game trailers and announcements that we had in the past week, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below. But right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. But before I move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor. I built my website, Riker.com, using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field. All thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Watch how easily I update the Diablo 4 section on my website to include all my latest coverage. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website, with tons of templates that you can easily customize to your needs, no knowledge of coding required. And with their new Fluid engine, it's easier than ever. You just drag and drop elements to move and resize them. You can even set up a custom merch shop with Squarespace now. You just design the products and they handle production, inventory, and shipping, all the stuff that would be a nightmare to handle on your own. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. It's the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything. Your products, content you create, even your time. Squarespace is offering my viewers 10% off your first purchase with them. Just go to squarespace.com/Riker or click the link in the description to sign up and start building your online presence. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Riker to get started today. Kicking things off with Diablo news. Diablo 4 has been getting review bombed on Metacritic. Well, maybe you can argue whether it's actual review bombing, we can mince words over the definition. But the game's certainly getting a whole lot of 0 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. And I gotta say, as someone who used to work as a video game journalist who would have to review games from any number of different publishers, big and small, if that's a 2 out of 10 for you, I got some games to show you. Now on OpenCritic, Diablo 4 still has an 88 out of 100 average review score, with 96% of critics recommending it. But on Metacritic, the user score is a 5.2 out of 10. Again, we see a lot of 0s, 1s, 2s, and 3s. Now, this is not necessarily review bombing if the people leaving the reviews genuinely feel that's what the game is worth. Again, though, if you're going to give Diablo 4 a 0 out of 10, then what would you give a game that is unplayable, ugly graphics, poorly optimized? I mean, there's got to be some scale that goes lower. Now, one argument I tend to see is, oh, well, I'm rating it as 0 to counteract all the 10s. That's not how reviews work. You don't make your score relative to other people's scores. Now, ultimately, I know that what we see here with whether it's review bombing or not is ultimately irrelevant. What it is frustration. We generally observe this kind of phenomenon when a player base feels like they have no voice, they have no agency, they have no way to really make themselves heard. And so what can I do? What can we manifest collectively as the communal rage of a fan base, of a player base? As consumers, well, we put a bunch of 0s and 1s and we bring down the score, and that's gonna get some attention. That's gonna make some noise. Ultimately, I don't think anything productive ever really comes of review bombing. I don't think I've ever seen a scenario in which devs looked at review bombs and said, oh man, yeah, we gotta do something. But you can argue, well, the point isn't to effectuate change with the game, it's to warn other people off from buying the game. And even then, I mean, when a potential customer is going to go look at reviews, first off, they have to actually go look at the user reviews, and they'll see, okay, well, the critics are giving it a 9 out of 10, user reviews are giving it a 5 out of 10, what's going on here? They might dig in further, and if they're going to see a bunch of 0s, then they might just chalk it up to, oh, there's some drama going on. These are people that hate the company, they're going to rate any product from the company as 0. So it just kind of seems for some people, leaving a game a 0 or a 1, a score so unrealistically low is just a quick way to get your review ignored. But this also begs the question of, what do scores even mean? Myself personally, I hate giving numerical scores to games, because what a 5 out of 10 means for me is going to be different than what it means for you. It'll be different from what it means from your cousin Jim Bob. It'll be different from what it means for Juliana in Apartment 3. But I believe what we're starting to observe now that we're a good week into the life of Diablo 4 is a couple frustrations that are emerging. One is the response of players to the consecutive nerfs that the devs have been doling out in response to players finding ways to play the game or optimize their play of the game in ways that the devs did not intend, which can be seen as the devs taking fun away from the players. In some situations, this is nerfing things that were performing an order of magnitude or two more powerfully than the devs intended, and in other cases it's been consistently nerfing the most effective XP runs that players have been doing, which is, to clarify, taking half a dungeon, running it over and over and over and over, that same half dungeon over and over and over and over and over, which I think we can all agree is not the way any of us want to be playing the game. It's not the way the devs want us playing the game, and it's not the way players would want to play the game. At least it wouldn't be their perfect game in their minds, but they're doing it because it's the most effective thing, and because the other things to do either aren't as fun or as rewarding, or they're less efficient. But I also think another part of it is stemming from something that I brought up in my review, which was effectively that I believe that some modern ARPG fans just will not enjoy the pace of Diablo 4, which is meant to be a slower paced game. It's not meant to be a game where you sit in town and open a rift and blitz through it in 2 minutes over and over and over. I think everyone had a phenomenal honeymoon phase with the game, but for some people that have been really grinding it, which will tend to be the people that are active modern day ARPG players, they have gone through a lot of the content. They put in many hours. They are level 70, 80, 90, some of them even 100. They have burned through this content faster than 99% of the population. They now feel what this endgame loop is and the pace of it, and all these systems that make the game slower paced. That is, having to travel on your horse to get from point A to point B, having to fight fewer enemies at a time in order to ensure that combat remains more methodical. All of these things are now coming to a head, and people are realizing the game is not designed for you to be chain killing screens of 30 enemies at a time. And some people don't like that. And to clarify, this is a bit of an exaggeration, because I know some people will respond, well, I don't want to be killing 30 enemies at a time, but I want to be killing at least more than 5 at a time. And again, so there's some middle ground to be had here. So we're going to see this feedback put forth. And alongside all that, we have people saying, oh, like the level grind becomes a slog after 70. Don't you think leveling is too slow in this game that's just been out for a week? So we're arriving in this uncomfortable situation where we have some players who they just want to get to level 100 as fast as possible. That's the game for them. I don't know if it's this mentality that the game starts at 100 when really the game starts at 50 or sooner. But people coming from Diablo 3 can easily think, well, you know, you get to 70 and then the game starts and you're grinding out your Paragon. In a lot of MMOs, the gameplay is the game starts at max level. But again, in Diablo 4, that's not the case. You're fundamentally doing the same thing from level 50 to 100. Or you can argue once you hit World Tier 4. That is the end game of the end game, apart from the pinnacle boss at the very end. But again, we're in this weird place where the devs wanted Diablo 4 to be one thing, and some of the players, or some players coming from other games, expect and want Diablo 4 to be something else. And so now the question is, what's going to happen? Because something's going to happen, and that something is either going to be that the devs are going to move from their original vision in order to try to appease these people, and in doing so, potentially alienate the people that liked the vision that was originally conceived, or these unhappy people will come to a realization that Diablo 4 is not a game for them and will have to move on. Or, you know, they'll just stick around and complain forever. And part of the issue here is that we just have such a fundamentally wide gulf in the kinds of people that play this kind of game. On one extreme, you have the people that will blast for 10 plus hours a day, every day, playing at maximum efficiency, doing the most efficient thing they can be doing, and doing it in the most efficient way possible, taking no breaks, constantly grinding, blasting, and these are the people that are going to be hitting level 100 first. And then all the way on the other end of the scale, you got the people that are just playing for pure fun. They're not looking up build guides, they are just picking their skills along the way, building their character. They don't care at all about efficiency, they just care about doing the content. As long as they are killing monsters, as long as they are not failing, the game is not telling them they're failing, they're going to keep doing their thing, they're going to keep plugging away, they're going to play a little bit, maybe an hour a day max, maybe just a couple or a few hours a week. They're going to do all the side quests, they're going to listen to the dialogue, they're going to enjoy the world. After every dungeon, they're going to go take a break, grab a snack, have a laugh with their friends who they're playing with. And of course, you have the entire spectrum of people in between, but it's effectively two completely different games and two completely different ways of playing the game. I mean, this leads into these stats that Blizzard revealed to us. As of earlier this week, only about 6,500 players had reached level 100. Now, Blizzard has also revealed that Diablo 4 has generated over $666 million worth of revenue, so some very back-of-the-envelope math on that would suggest the game has sold 5 to 10 million copies. 5 on the conservative end, estimating the cost of a game to be between $70 and $100, and the fact that people could be spending money on cosmetics as well. Again, a very conservative 5 million minimum players. So that means roughly 0.1% of the player base has reached level 100. And arguably another thing that points to this disparity between the two groups of players is the fact that the most popular class is the Sorcerer, which most of the top-end players say is actually the worst class to play at Endgame, the most underpowered class for Endgame gameplay. So if the majority of the population would be aware of this and would play for efficiency and would look up the tier lists and the build guides, they would see and know Sorcerer is the worst. But the fact that we don't see that suggests to us that most people are just playing for fun. So I honestly don't know what's going to happen with Diablo 4. I did foresee this coming. And just to clarify, the concerns raised by those top-end, those extreme players are not necessarily irrelevant to the rest of the players. Some of the concerns they raise are because of the way they choose to play the game, i.e. maximizing efficiency, but some of their concerns are simply concerns that will eventually be stumbled upon by the players once they reach those higher levels. And we actually got a glimpse today at how the devs are going to be responding to the feedback. We got a full video breaking down a summary of what they covered and what they spoke about during this stream, during which they acknowledged a good majority of the concerns that the community has been expressing over the past 10 days, as well as their plans and timelines on how and when they're going to be addressing these issues. And for me, one of the most mind-blowing and telling things was that they are planning to let us teleport straight to our nightmare dungeons. If you'll remember, just a couple minutes ago, I said this. It's not meant to be a game where you sit in town and open a rift and blitz through it in 2 minutes over and over and over. But now they'll be implementing a system whereby Nightmare Sigils will be able to transport you directly to said Nightmare Dungeon, which isn't a whole lot different from just standing in town and spamming dungeons over and over. So we're already seeing what appears to be a major concession in design decision whereby, it was the point that you had to travel to these dungeons already within 10 days of the game releasing being made to the community. And I think back again on the interview I had with Joe Shelley and Rod Ferguson back in December when I asked, hey, modern ARPGs all evolve towards this speed meta endgame. Do you think in a couple of years Diablo 4's slower pace is going to move in that same direction? And they effectively said, well, we can't predict the future, but if that's what the community wants, we're open to moving things in that direction. Now, speaking of Rod also confirmed on Twitter a particular bug. Basically, druids had a propensity to get barbarian loot. Rod acknowledged it and confirmed that they are working to fix that. Personally, I just thought this was a super immersive lore experience. You see, druids and barbarians are basically cousins. They come from the same people long ago. But two leaders emerged among them, Bolkathos and Fiaclager. And one, Bolkathos, took the warrior approach, and so his tribe became the barbarians, and Fiaclager took the more spiritual approach, and they became druids. For more Diablo lore, you can check out my lore series. Now, Blizzard also updated us that as of earlier this week, only 291 players have reached hardcore level 100. So there's still room for 709 more people to get their name on that trophy. Now, I've had people ask me, Riker, do you think it's too late for me to get started and get my place on that top 1,000? Nope. Go for it. If you think that you can put in a good amount of time, a good amount of effort, I think it's still anyone's game at this point. You might think, oh man, but I'm just starting now. Other people might have started a week ago. Hey, those people can die anytime. Their characters can die too. Also, folks, in case you haven't seen it, I released this week a video on 4 game-changing tools that I use when I play Diablo 4. World Boss Tracker, Helltide Tracker, World Map showing me all the altars of Lilith, all the locations of everything. Do give that video a look. Also, I have my beginner's guide, which is much more than just a beginner's guide. If you haven't seen that, it's chock full of different tips. I can almost guarantee you there's something in there that you don't know. Because if there isn't, then you truly are already a Diablo 4 master. Now, one of the tools that I talk about in my video is maxrule.gg, an ultimate resource website full of tier lists and guides for you to follow. And they just did a massive update this week by introducing the D4 Planner. With this, you could make your own builds. You can theory craft them. You can select your skills, your paragon, your gear, everything. All right, that concludes the Diablo news. Let's move on to talking about the latest in the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. We actually had some developments here. Things are getting spicy. By the end of August, this will likely be done. Now, as a reminder, July 18th was the original deadline for this deal to close. If the deal does not close, then Microsoft has to pay a $3 billion penalty to Activision Blizzard. Now, technically, the deadline could be extended, but they would have to at least get an extension. So this week, we actually had a court battle between the UK's CMA, which had blocked the acquisition, the CMA being their regulatory body, their version of the US FTC. The UK had blocked the deal, being the first country and only country to fully block the acquisition. So Microsoft was in court now with the CMA because Microsoft is appealing their decision, as they are allowed to do. And so the fight was over whether or not in this appeal, Microsoft would be permitted to use direct evidence from experts. The CMA's position is no, let's not use direct evidence from experts. And so the judge ruled, yeah, we're going to use direct evidence from experts. So given that the CMA's entire objection is based on the premise of cloud gaming and their belief that cloud gaming is this incredibly important sector of gaming and somehow disparate from the rest of gaming, either they have a fundamental misunderstanding of the gaming landscape, or they are extremely hopeful and optimistic about the future of cloud gaming in the next 10 years. Or they are deliberately acting in bad faith and hoping that judges are going to be old fogies that just don't even understand anything about cloud gaming. So presumably bringing in actual experts in the field is likely to lean towards helping Microsoft here. Cloud gaming makes up such a tiniest sliver of revenue within the gaming industry, and its growth is not indicative of something that is about to explode anytime soon. I mean, Stadia just failed. But anyway, their court date is going to be on July 28th, and the judge wants the case to be over with in about 10 days. Now, on top of that, the FTC has also moved a chess piece. Now, the FTC in the past, a few months ago, it didn't outright block the deal, but it effectively put it on hold. They wanted time to go back to court and present an argument to block it. But really, the FTC was effectively pulling out stall tactics. They knew that the deal would collapse after July 18th, and the FTC was trying to delay court hearings until September. But now there have been a lot of rumors that Microsoft was considering just moving through with the deal and cutting out the UK entirely. So, under the concern that Microsoft might just push the deal through prematurely before they would get their court date, the FTC filed an injunction to block Microsoft from doing that, from closing the deal prematurely before they go to court. So this actually works in Microsoft's favor because now it brings up the court date. Now on June 23rd, the FTC and Microsoft will be in court. And the judge who's going to be overseeing these court proceedings is the same judge who oversaw the proceedings from a few months ago that we didn't really talk about because they were pretty silly to begin with, when gamers tried to sue to block the acquisition. So this judge did shoot down that case because she felt that while yes, in theory, Microsoft could make Activision Blizzard's games exclusive to Xbox, the gamers did not present any convincing evidence that they would do so. So again now, overall, things are looking promising for Microsoft's ability to go through with this acquisition. On to some quick Overwatch 2 news. We got this week the trailer for Invasion. which will be the first of Overwatch 2's PvE offerings from the cancelled PvE mode. On August 10th, players will receive new maps, new missions, and all new ways to play. However, it seems a lot of the player base is not happy. Why? Because in order to access these 3 new missions, you gotta pay $15. Now, in fairness, with this $15, you're basically buying a battle pass. So you're not paying $15 just for those 3 maps. You're getting a bundle that includes enough in-game currency to buy a battle pass, plus some cosmetics. So for a lot of players who were looking forward to the full PvE campaign, they were expecting, okay, $40 to maybe $60 to get this massive PvE mode that was promised with dozens or hundreds of maps, who knows, all these skill systems and everything. And now it seems what we're getting is 3 maps at a time for $15 a piece. Again, you can argue, yes, but you're getting other things with those 3 maps, but if you don't care about those other things, the only way for you to access those 3 maps is to pay the $15. So if they release 3 maps every quarter, that's going to be 12 maps by the end for the price of $60 total. I gotta feel bad for Overwatch fans who really cared about the PvE. It's just one gut punch after another. Now, also this week, we had a number of game reveals, trailers, gameplay footage reveals, thanks to a number of different game showcases we had, so I'll go over some of my highlights. We got a trailer for Starfield, plus a 45-minute deep dive, and this game is just looking phenomenal. It seems to be hitting on a number of different sci-fi notes, and as I'm looking at some of the gameplay footage, it almost feels like I get a bit of a Fallout feeling out of it, which is understandable since it's Bethesda, but I almost feel that the world of Fallout could be one of these 1,000 worlds in Starfield. This game looks like it has the potential to be a generation-defining game. Starfield releases September 6th. We also got the trailer for Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. We got more Keanu Reeves, we got Idris Elba, and this spy thriller expansion releases on September 26th. And while it's technically an expansion, it's really almost Cyberpunk 2.0. They are overhauling and fundamentally changing so many game systems that it's not just more content, it's a massive upgrade to Cyberpunk. The police mechanics are getting reworked. The perk system is updated. The damage and health system is changed. We got real vehicle combat now. There's an entirely new 6th skill tree. Installing cyberware can now make you suffer from cyberpsychosis. You can hack vehicles. They're adding new infinitely replayable missions. And there's just tons of new events and activities. This almost feels like the edition of the game that they wanted to launch. Then we also got the world premiere trailer of Star Wars Outlaws, and it is chock full of 1970s transition wipes, which I just love how that automatically makes something feel Star Wars. It's hitting all the right nostalgia vibes. We see a Rancor, and it's set between the events of Empire and Jedi. We also got a 10-minute gameplay walkthrough. The music is on point, but I gotta say, as I'm watching it, I couldn't help but feel that I'm watching the adventures of Jan Solo and Cute Baka. I mean, she even shoots Greedo, some Rodian. But honestly, I'm not even saying that as a bad thing. I'm all about it. Sure, give us Jan Solo. It's cool. Then a second new teaser dropped for Path of Exile 2, which seems to depict what looks like a monk class. And there's just something about the combat in these trailers that just looks next gen. I mean, we're just entering the current new next gen, and this already looks next gen beyond that. ExileCon will take place July 28th and 29th, in which we'll learn everything about PoE 2. Then we got a trailer for Fable, no release window there, but we got a very unexpected and entertaining trailer. I encourage you folks to check it out for yourself. We got a gameplay demo for Armored Core 6. I get a distinct retro vibe to what I'm seeing here. I can't quite put my finger on why, but combat looks smooth, flying and skating around in a mech is always a blast. We got a reveal trailer of Clockwork Revolution, which is a time-bending steampunk first-person RPG. And my first thought upon seeing these visuals was Dishonored meets BioShock Infinite. Oh, and this game also has mechs, but steampunk mechs, so that's cool. Now, apparently as part of the narrative, you're going to travel back to key moments in time, and then your interactions and choices will have a butterfly effect on this deep narrative-driven world and its characters. So this sounds like it has the potential to be really interesting. Then we got the announced trailer of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and it is just loaded with features and activities. You got aerial firefighting, search and rescue operations with a helicopter, helicopter cargo transport, air ambulance, agricultural aviation, mountain rescue, skydive aviation, aerial construction, industrial cargo transport, remote cargo ops, VIP charter service, air racing, glider pilot, scientific research, experimental flight, low-altitude flying, executive transport service, airship tour, and hot air balloon trips. And this one is coming 2024. We got the pre-order trailer for Cities Skylines 2, which releases October 24th. This is looking great. Looks like they improved upon the game by adding a lot of the functionality that mods were adding. A lot of the core player base felt that in order to really play the game, you have to install certain mods, especially those related to traffic and roads, and that all seems to now be built straight into the game. Then we got the official game overview trailer of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, a game that I would have thought I would have cared nothing about, but it actually looks fun. I say that because I'm not a fan of Avatar. I mean, I enjoyed the film, but I wouldn't call myself a fan of it. And this game is a first-person action-adventure that is set after the events of the first film, which seem to largely follow the same plot as the first film, but you know what? That's actually great. If you love the first Avatar movie, it seems like you would love this game because it seems to hit all those same beats. It's almost like playing through that movie. The visuals, everything looks exactly how you would think it would like it. It looks like the movie, just slightly lower res. It seems to be everything someone could possibly want out of an Avatar game. And it is Ubisoft. It does seem to, you know, when you hear more about the gameplay, it seems kind of like Far Cry Pandora, but hey, even if that's exactly what it is, that sounds like it can be an excellent game. Then we got a gameplay showcase for Lords of the Fallen, showcasing the Dual Worlds system. Now this game is a dark fantasy action RPG. No, not the Diablo kind of action RPG. It's releasing Friday the 13th in October. It's got big Dark Souls vibes, but it's using this gimmick with the two worlds and swapping between them that is visually depicted in a really cool manner, and hopefully won't just be a gimmick, but will actually lead to meaningful and interesting gameplay. And we'll end things off with less exciting news. Embracer Group is entering a restructuring program that is likely to lead to the closure of a number of game studios and or the shutting down of projects and or the laying off of employees, or some mixture of all of the above. The CEO said this is to better optimize Embracer's resources. Now, Embracer had been buying up a bunch of studios over the past few years, with their most recent meaningful acquisition being Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal. And then they promptly closed down Square Enix Montreal. They also bought the rights to make Lord of the Rings games. But earlier this year, a deal that they were negotiating worth $2 billion fell through. Now Embracer is looking to cut costs by 10%. And they said that this restructuring will include the closing of studios and termination of projects that have not yet been announced and with low projected returns. They also said that Embracer currently engages close to 17,000 people, and while that number will be lower by the end of the year, it is too early to give an exact forecast on this, on how many people will lose their jobs. They also said that they will reduce investment into external development to focus on internal development based on owned or controlled IP, while also seeing increased external funding of internally developed large budget games. Now again, Embracer owns a ton of different studios, and I expect the ones that will probably be hit the hardest will be the smaller ones, but by the same token, it's the bigger studios that cost the most to run. So there could be a tightening of the belt all across the board. Whatever the case may be, reducing costs by 10%, most companies' biggest cost is payroll. So 17,000 employees, that could be 1,700 people losing their jobs within a year, as they are going to be implementing this starting in October, but rolling into 2024. And on that dour note, that's going to end this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we discussed how Whoopi Goldberg is kind of ticked off that Diablo 4 is not on Mac. Can't make this stuff up. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.